When life throws chaos your way, how do you respond? When someone disrespects you, do you explode or stay calm? When outcomes don't match your efforts, do you crumble or grow? These questions define more than your mood. They shape your entire life trajectory. So, what if you could become mentally unshakable, no matter what comes your way? In today's video, we're going to unpack timeless Stoic strategies rooted in the teachings of Marcus Aurelius that not only help you weather emotional storms, but also transform adversity into personal power. If you're ready to build inner strength, emotional control, and lasting peace, hit that subscribe button. Let's start mastering the mind. 1. Control the controllables. Control the controllables. It sounds like a motivational quote you'd find on a gym wall or a corporate poster, but its origins trace back to one of the most profound philosophies of human strength, Stoicism. The first rule of power, according to the Stoics, is simple yet radical. Know what is within your control and what never was. That's it. It sounds so straightforward, but living by that distinction is a lifetime of discipline and transformation. Epictetus, one of the most influential Stoic philosophers, taught that some things are up to us: our opinions, our intentions, our desires, our aversions, and some things are not, like the behavior of others, the weather, the economy, or even our own health outcomes at times. To mix up these categories is to invite frustration, anxiety, and a deep sense of helplessness. But to learn to live within our sphere of influence, that's freedom. Think about a normal day. You're stuck in traffic, already running late. Your boss sends a critical email. A friend forgets an important conversation. These events are external. They exist outside your realm of influence. What is within your control? Your breath, your internal dialogue, your ability to pause before reacting. You can choose whether you stew in anger or accept and adapt. You can choose your focus, obsess over what's wrong, or redirect your attention toward what's still within reach. The Stoic doesn't deny difficulty. They train themselves to respond with calm, clarity, and resolve. It's not about being passive. It's about being wise in where you place your energy. Modern psychology reinforces what the Stoics intuited thousands of years ago. Psychologists refer to this mindset as an internal locus of control, the belief that your outcomes are largely shaped by your actions rather than by luck or external forces. People with a strong internal locus of control tend to be more resilient, have better coping skills, and report higher levels of happiness and purpose. They bounce back faster from setbacks because they don't waste time blaming the world. They get to work changing what they can, themselves. That doesn't mean ignoring injustice or becoming emotionally numb. It means anchoring your power where it actually lives, in your choices. Let's go deeper. When you stop trying to manipulate what you cannot control, you reclaim enormous reserves of mental and emotional energy. That's energy you can now invest in mastering yourself, developing discipline, cultivating patience, deepening your relationships, and growing your skills. Instead of being tossed by every external storm, you become rooted like an oak tree, responsive but unshakable. Imagine how much more powerful you'd feel if you weren't constantly at the mercy of circumstances. That's the Stoic promise. Not immunity from hardship, but immunity from helplessness. In today's hyper-connected world, we're bombarded with information, opinions, comparisons, and crises that beg for our emotional attention. But Stoicism reminds us to ask, is this mine to carry? If it is, carry it with purpose. If it's not, release it. When you shift from reacting to responding, from controlling others to mastering yourself, you step into a different kind of power. Not the loud, flashy power of domination, but the steady, silent strength of presence and purpose. Control the controllables, and you control your life. 2. Mastering emotional regulation. Feelings are inevitable, but reactions are optional. That's the heart of emotional mastery, and for the Stoics, it was essential to human greatness. We often imagine Stoics as cold or indifferent, but that's a modern misunderstanding. In truth, the Stoics were emotionally intelligent long before the term existed. They understood that emotions arise automatically. We're wired to feel joy, sorrow, anger, jealousy, love. But where they differed from the reactive crowd was in what happened next. Instead of letting feelings hijack their reason, they practiced what we might now call mindfulness and cognitive reappraisal, the art of stepping back, observing an emotion, and consciously deciding what to do with it. Let's consider a common example. Someone insults you in front of others. Your body tenses, your heart races. The emotional reflex is anger, maybe even retaliation. But the Stoic doesn't act on impulse. The Stoic inserts a pause. In that pause is power. You ask yourself, is this worth my peace? Is this an attack or simply a reflection of their own pain? Can I respond with dignity instead of instinct? This ability to pause, to question rather than react, is what separates emotional maturity from emotional slavery. It's not that the Stoic doesn't feel. They simply don't let emotions rule them. James Gross, a prominent psychologist, developed what's known as emotion regulation theory, which aligns almost perfectly with Stoic practice. His model outlines how individuals can regulate their emotional experiences through strategies like reappraisal, rethinking a situation to change its emotional impact, and attentional deployment, shifting focus away from emotionally triggering details. Stoics were using these tools intuitively long ago. Marcus Aurelius, emperor and Stoic philosopher, wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." In other words, regulate your perception, and you regulate your emotional world. Another modern parallel is the practice of distancing, or creating cognitive space between the stimulus and the response. When you mentally step outside yourself, viewing a situation as if from above, you gain perspective. Suddenly, that hurtful comment or unexpected rejection doesn't feel like an attack on your identity. It's just a moment, a wave you don't have to surf. Stoic reflection trains the brain to distinguish signal from noise, to act on what's true, not what's merely loud. It's emotional aikido, using the momentum of your emotions to redirect rather than resist. Real strength, then, isn't in suppressing your feelings. That just stores them for a later explosion. True strength is emotional agility, the ability to feel deeply but act wisely. It's being the calm in the storm, not by accident, but by conscious practice. When you master emotional regulation, you don't just survive life's chaos, you influence it. You become a grounded presence in a reactive world. That's not weakness, it's Stoic courage in motion. 3. Negative visualization, strength through simulated loss. At first glance, the idea of negative visualization might seem morbid or depressing. Who wants to dwell on loss, failure, or hardship? But the Stoics believed that confronting the worst-case scenario before it happens was the key to building unshakable strength. Known as premeditatio malorum, premeditation of evils, this practice involved vividly imagining potential setbacks, losing a job, being betrayed, getting sick, or even dying. But the goal wasn't to wallow in dread. It was to strip fear of its surprise and power. As Seneca said, he robs present ills of their power, who has perceived their coming. Why does this work? Because the human mind is wired to fear uncertainty more than adversity. When we avoid thinking about worst-case outcomes, we actually give them more power. But when we turn and face those outcomes mentally, something shifts. Our fear loses its grip. Our expectations adjust, and we prepare, not just practically, but emotionally. If you've already envisioned yourself losing a possession or facing a breakup, you're less devastated if it happens. You've rehearsed resilience. You've simulated loss to build strength. Modern psychology confirms this Stoic insight. Techniques like stress inoculation training and exposure therapy are built on similar principles. In stress inoculation, individuals are gradually exposed to simulated stressors, allowing them to practice coping strategies in a controlled way. Over time, their tolerance and confidence grow. In exposure therapy, people confront fears intentionally, like public speaking, heights, or rejection, until the brain rewires its emotional response. Negative visualization does the same thing. It conditions the mind to encounter fear with familiarity, not panic. Importantly, Stoics didn't use this practice to become numb. On the contrary, imagining loss made them more grateful for what they had. Marcus Aurelius would remind himself that his loved ones could be gone tomorrow, not to despair, but to appreciate them more deeply today. This fusion of realism and gratitude is the essence of Stoic mindfulness. When you contemplate impermanence, you stop taking life for granted. You treat ordinary moments as fragile gifts. You live with more presence, less entitlement. So how can you practice this today? Take a quiet moment each morning to imagine a few small things going wrong. A missed deadline, a cancelled plan, a broken phone. Then go bigger. A financial hit, a betrayal, a health scare. Breathe into the discomfort. Notice how your mind reacts. Then ask, if this happened, how would I cope? What would still matter? Who would I become through it? These questions reveal inner reserves of strength you didn't know you had, and paradoxically, by rehearsing loss, you fear it less and live more fully. In a culture obsessed with positivity and avoidance of discomfort, Stoic negative visualization is a bold countermove. It doesn't deny hardship, it prepares for it. It's not pessimism, it's preparation. And from preparation comes peace. When you've looked the worst in the eye and stayed steady, you carry yourself differently. You don't live in denial. You live in clarity. That's the power of Stoic practice, strength born not from fantasy, but from fearless realism. 4. Accepting impermanence, nothing lasts, and that's okay. Here's a truth most people run from: nothing lasts forever. And that includes pain. The very fabric of existence is woven with change, decay, and transformation. Every high and low, every joy and sorrow, every relationship, achievement, and loss. None of them are permanent fixtures in our lives. Yet despite knowing this intellectually, we often act as though we can freeze moments in time, preserve what pleases us, and outrun what doesn't. Pain particularly feels eternal when we're in the thick of it. It seems to stretch time, darken perspective, and erase hope. But time, like a great healer, doesn't ask permission to move forward. And as it does, even the deepest wounds close, the sharpest grief dulls, and the most confusing chapters begin to make sense, or at least lose their power to dominate our inner landscape. Stoicism teaches us not to fear this impermanence, but to accept it as the way of nature. Once we accept that no state is fixed, we become freer. Not because suffering ends, but because our relationship to it changes. We stop resisting its presence, and instead begin to see its temporary nature. In this acceptance, there is unexpected comfort. We find strength not in pretending things will last forever, but in understanding that they won't, and knowing that's perfectly okay. Stoicism teaches us to see life as fluid, constantly shifting. The good fades, so does the bad. What matters is how gracefully we adapt. The Stoics viewed life much like a river, ever-flowing, unpredictable, and uncontrollable. Trying to hold onto moments, whether pleasurable or painful, is like trying to grasp water with your hands. It slips through regardless of your effort. When we understand this, we begin to see our role not as controllers of fate, but as dancers in its current, moving in rhythm with its beat. Life's fluidity can be frightening, but it's also where its beauty lies. The seasons change, our bodies age, people come and go, and nothing stays the same. Instead of seeing this as tragic, Stoicism suggests we treat it as liberating. The end of something good makes way for something new. The end of suffering creates space for peace. If we can train ourselves to expect change rather than resist it, then disappointment and attachment lose their grip. We become more agile in our responses to challenges and more appreciative of the fleeting joys. This fluidity demands not resignation, but resilience, a readiness to bend without breaking. Grace is not in holding on, but in letting go with dignity. Instead of resisting change, the wise embrace it, knowing that all things are temporary visitors, not permanent residents. Stoic wisdom encourages us to treat everything and everyone as transient. Whether it's a promotion at work, a passionate romance, or even a struggle with illness, all of these are guests in our life. We can enjoy them, learn from them, and even grieve when they leave, but we must not confuse them with our essence. You are not your circumstances. You are the observer, the responder, the one who decides how to carry the presence or absence of things. This perspective doesn't harden the heart, it softens it. You begin to love more deeply because you understand loss is inevitable. You start to cherish more deliberately because you know nothing is guaranteed. The wise don't become indifferent. They become intentional. There is immense power in looking at life this way. When something good enters your life, you welcome it with gratitude, knowing it may not last. When hardship comes, you greet it with curiosity, knowing it too will pass. This mindset turns every experience into a teacher and every moment into something sacred. Mindfulness-based stress reduction in modern therapy borrows from this principle. By accepting impermanence, you reduce suffering and deepen appreciation. Developed by Jon Kabat-Zinn, mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, has its roots in Eastern philosophy and echoes many Stoic principles. At its core is the idea of non-resistance, allowing thoughts, emotions, and sensations to arise and fall without judgment or clinging. It trains the mind to witness the present moment as it is, not as we wish it to be. This therapeutic approach has been scientifically shown to reduce anxiety, depression, and chronic pain. Why? Because it helps people stop fighting reality. When we drop the resistance, our nervous system relaxes, our emotions settle, and we reclaim our clarity. The practice of mindfulness teaches that no feeling is final. It helps us observe grief without drowning in it, anger without becoming consumed, and joy without grasping. Just as Stoicism advocates for observing external events with calm detachment, mindfulness invites us to observe our internal states with gentle awareness. In both traditions, we learn that impermanence is not a flaw of life, but a feature, and that by embracing it, we unlock a more peaceful, grateful, and resilient way of living. Peace comes not from control, but from surrendering to the rhythm of reality. We spend so much of our lives trying to orchestrate outcomes, cling to certainty, and micromanage the future. But true peace, the kind that lasts beyond temporary wins, doesn't come from domination over life. It comes from humility, recognizing that much of what happens is out of our control. Surrender here doesn't mean passivity. It means alignment. It means accepting what is instead of being at war with it. It's the understanding that the universe doesn't owe us permanence, that joy and suffering alike are visitors we can greet with equanimity. This doesn't mean we stop caring or striving. It means we stop demanding. We still set goals, love deeply, work hard, but without the expectation that life must conform to our plans. This shift from control to surrender is radical. It changes our relationship with time, loss, and even ourselves. When we align with reality rather than fight it, we move through life with grace. We become like a tree that bends with the wind but doesn't break. In this surrender, we find a paradoxical strength, the kind of calm that endures not because the storm has passed, but because we've learned how to dance in the rain. 5. Act with virtue, not for outcome. What if success wasn't measured by results, but by integrity? In a world that relentlessly equates achievement with worth, this question cuts through the noise. We are constantly told to chase milestones, promotions, wealth, followers, grades, praise. But what happens when we meet these targets and still feel empty, or worse, when we fall short? Stoicism offers a different yardstick for success. It asks, did you act with virtue? Were you honest, courageous, disciplined, and fair, regardless of the result? If the answer is yes, then in the Stoic worldview, you have succeeded. This shift in perspective is radical in a culture obsessed with performance. It reminds us that true success lies in character, not in trophies. When you measure your life by values rather than outcomes, you become unshakable. Wins no longer inflate your ego, and losses no longer shatter your identity. Integrity becomes your compass, guiding you through both triumph and trial. Stoicism isn't about being passive. It demands action, but not attachment. Do the right thing, even if it doesn't lead to reward. Show up, even when results don't follow. This is the Stoic paradox. You are called to act with full heart and effort, while simultaneously releasing attachment to what happens next. You help someone in need, not because they'll thank you, but because helping is right. You pursue excellence in your work, not for applause, but because excellence is its own reward. This detachment from outcome doesn't weaken motivation, it purifies it. It frees you from the emotional roller coaster of success and failure. You become focused not on controlling what you can't, but on mastering what you can. Your choices, your behavior, your inner world. This is not apathy, it's agency. Stoicism doesn't say don't care. It says care rightly. Care about virtue. Care about your duty. Care about being a good human being regardless of how the world responds. This is where Stoic ethics shine. Focus on virtue, not validation. The Stoics placed virtue, the cultivation of moral character, at the heart of a meaningful life. According to Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, and Seneca, our only true possession is our moral faculty. Everything else, health, wealth, reputation, is indifferent. It's not that those things don't matter, but they don't define who you are. In a society driven by likes, grades, and external approval, this principle is deeply countercultural. Yet it's also deeply liberating. When you live for validation, you become a prisoner of others' opinions. But when you live for virtue, you become your own master. The Stoic path asks, are you being honest when it's hard? Are you staying calm in the face of anger? Are you doing what's right, even when it's inconvenient? These are the metrics that matter. Validation is fleeting, virtue is enduring. And when you build a life on virtue, you create something that no circumstance can take away. In psychology, this echoes self-determination theory. Intrinsic motivation, acting from purpose, not pressure, leads to greater fulfillment and sustainable achievement. Developed by psychologists Edward Dacey and Richard Ryan, self-determination theory, SDT, emphasizes the importance of autonomy, competence, and relatedness in human motivation. In simple terms, people thrive when they act from inner conviction rather than external coercion. This aligns perfectly with the Stoic call to act according to your values. When you do something because it reflects who you are, not because someone told you to or because you want a reward, you experience deeper satisfaction. Research shows that intrinsic motivation leads to better mental health, higher creativity, and long-term perseverance. This is especially relevant in today's burnout-prone world, where external pressures are constant. By shifting our focus from performance to purpose, from reward to integrity, we not only succeed more sustainably, we suffer less. Virtue, then, is not just a noble ideal, it's a practical strategy for living well. You're not a product of outcomes, you're a reflection of consistent, values-driven action. This is the essence of both Stoicism and modern behavioral science. Who you are is not defined by what happens to you, but by how you respond. You may win or lose, get hired or rejected, praised or criticized, but those are merely external events. What truly matters is whether you stayed true to your principles. Did you treat people with respect? Did you keep your word? Did you persist when things got hard? These actions, repeated day after day, form your identity. They become your legacy. In a culture obsessed with highlight reels, Stoicism invites you to embrace the unseen moments, the quiet decisions, the internal battles, the consistent practice of virtue. Because in the end, it's not your outcomes that make you great, it's your character, and that is always within your control. From philosophy to practice, own your inner world. So what now? You've learned to focus on what you can control, to master emotion with intention, to visualize loss and grow from it, to accept life's changes, and to act with purpose over outcome. But knowledge isn't transformation, practice is. Each day, reflect, what did I handle well? What can I improve? This reflective loop turns theory into growth. In a world full of noise and chaos, Stoicism is not just a philosophy, it's a power source. Let it remind you, your mind is your fortress, your values are your compass, and your response, that's your legacy. Subscribe if you want more practical tools to strengthen your mindset. Share this with someone who needs grounding. And remember, external storms don't matter if your inner world stays calm. Until next time, stand tall, think clearly, and live virtuously.